Hi, today we're going to be talking about a hot topic, and that topic is about disruption because everybody's talking about businesses getting disrupted, right? So, how do we prevent our business from getting disrupted? So, this is something that I think a lot of business owners are very concerned about today, and I'm working with some clients of mine to work through this situation. So, I'll be sharing some stories with you on how you can prevent your business from getting disrupted. But first of all, let me just introduce some of the key concepts. As you know, this is Vern Harnish who wrote Scaling Up, and this book, Scaling Up, is really about helping companies to scale up, to break through the boundaries that limit them. And this book has helped thousands of companies to scale their business. And I am Jeremy. I work with Vern to help companies to implement some of these strategies and some of this thinking into the company, because we know that a lot of these companies, what we really need is execution and implementation. So that's where I come in to help a company to put in place these things and make things happen. So today we want to talk about this topic of disruption and why is this an important issue. Now, the common knowledge is that people say, oh, it's important because if you do not know about this, your business is going to get disrupted, right? So I think yes, that's true, but I think more importantly, it is really because I think a lot of people don't understand what happens during a disruption. So if you don't understand what happens during a disruption, then when it hits you, you won't even see it coming. Or what is worse is that if you don't understand what happens during a disruption, then how do you guard against it? How do you prevent it from happening? Because actually it's not true that every one of us are like victims sitting here waiting for the big one to hit us. But if we really understand what happens during a disruption, we might even turn it to our advantage. So before we start, let me share a story with you that Vern always talk about in his workshops, which I attend and help him to co-teach sometimes. So what is this industry here? It is a horse carriage, right? So in the past, people always says, who disrupted the horse carriage industry? Who disrupted this mode of transportation? The motor car, right? So does it mean that the horse is out of job? Think about that, right? Is it disruption? Right, it's totally replaced this industry. What happened to the horses? Are horses as an industry dead? The answer actually is no, because what you have today in the horse industry is actually a $300 billion industry. 300 billion, right? So this is an industry that's very much alive and well, and because it is alive and well, we can actually learn from it what actually happened in this disruption and actually led to a industry not only dying but thriving. So there are some lessons that we want to draw from there. So what I really want to share with you to understand a disruption is that disruption is actually a switch in the value proposition of your industry. So in the case of a horse, instead of being a mode of transport, it has now become a sport. Right, a horse is actually part of a sport that brings entertainment, thrill, excitement, challenge to people. So the value proposition offered by the horse has changed. So disruption is actually a change or a switch in value proposition where one current value proposition has been replaced by another. So if you can find another value proposition for what you're doing, then you're in effect able to escape a disruption. So some people are hit by a disruption, they do not know what to do. It's because they focus on the wrong thing. And what is this wrong thing that they all focus about? And that is they focus on the technology. They think that disruption is all about technology, but technology is just the means nowadays to bring forth this switch in value proposition. So if you identify correctly where the problem lies, and that is in the value proposition, then you are able to guard against that or come out with a new value proposition. So do not mistake disruptions as something that is because of technology only. Technology is just the means, but technology is not all about disruptions. So if you focus on technology, you miss the boat. So what you really want to focus on is focus on where are the value propositions in your industry. So let me share with you a story. So recently, there is a case where this girl from Harvard, this lady from Harvard, and she actually wants to come up with a 3D cosmetic set using a 3D printer to make these cosmetic sets. So and that could derail the 55 billion billion dollar industry. So why would this happen? It is really because it's going to upset the value train. It's going to replace or displace the value chain of the industry. What do we mean? So let me illustrate that with a simple diagram. Okay, so if you look at this picture here, what you are seeing is what we call a value train. So a value train essentially maps out where are the different creators of value, right? So something starts from the design and the concept all the way to what happens for the customer. It actually goes through a train, right? Different people or different parties contribute a particular set of value proposition to make it come to the end user, and that's why we call it a train, right? It actually moves the value towards the customer. So what is actually happening in this disruption is that this value train has been disrupted. The 3D printer is going to replace or displace these three value contributors. So for example, the manufacturer contributes value by producing a cosmetic set, because in the past the customer could not do that herself. But now, if the customer could do that herself through the 3D printing, then the value proposition offered by the manufacturer has been replaced. Same for the retailer. Their value proposition is to take those products from the manufacturer, put it in a place that's accessible to the customer, and make it ready for them to buy. But now, with this disruption, again, the value offered by the retailer has been replaced by the 3D printer. So this is actually what happens in a disruption. Value propositions get displaced. So, how do you know if your business is going to get disrupted? The first thing you need to do is to map out the value train of your industry. Look at what I've just did, mapping out that simple example, right? Who are those people? Who are the parties that contribute value to that whole industry? Now, which one will get displaced or disrupted? Which one is going to be kicked out of the value proposition, and what is going to be replaced? This is something, if you can map it out, then you can see very clearly where the next disruption is going to happen. Then you're going to ask that very, very, very important question, and that is the value proposition that you offer going to be the one that's going to be replaced? Because that is when disruption affects you. So if you can understand this, then you have got a choice now. Do you shift your value proposition, or do you move out of the industry, or you diversify, or you think about how do you maintain your relevancy, your value proposition to the whole value chain? So that is how companies can actually hedge against disruptions. So what are some common misconceptions about disruptions? I think the number one misconception is that disruptions disrupt the entire industry. Now again, the value train helps you to see where are the pockets of value that will survive, or where are the new values propositions that is needed to keep that value train going. So disruptions seldom destroy the entire industry. So if you are clear where the disruption is going to happen, you can move along that value train to still find your niche, to still find a place for your industry. Second, people like to talk about disruptions being digital. And again, I mentioned to you earlier on that digital is just the means. It is actually not the cause. What is the cause? It is actually changing value propositions. And the third misconception, a lot of people, they develop this very fatalistic attitude to say, oh, I cannot do anything to prevent a disruption. And what they actually try to do to escape is to go to a totally different industry. Now think about that. How much resources do you need to invest to diversify and be successful in another industry? Or is it easier to shift your value proposition within the existing industry so that you can actually survive the disruption or even thrive? Right? So these are three common misconceptions that I often hear from the people I work with about disruptions, and I want to just share that it's not true. Because if you can see through these misconceptions, then the chances of you surviving and thriving in the disruption increases. So the good news is this: you can actually mount your own disruption. A pharmaceutical company I work with has been in this situation because they know that 70% of the revenue actually comes from one retail source, right? So they're asking themselves this question: can we actually replicate the value proposition offered by this chain of retail pharmacies? So if they can replicate it somehow, whether it's through technology, selling medicine through a platform or a e-commerce portal, then they could have replicated the value proposition of this chain of companies, and they could reduce their dependence on them. So they were actually planning to mount their own disruption, and that's something I'm working with them on, to really map out their value chain in detail and knowing where to disrupt. And of course, you can protect against a potential disruption, because if you are able to see in that value chain where the next disruption is going to happen, then you can do what we call an intermediation strategy. So you look at what's going to be disrupted and what's going to be replaced, because very often when something is taken out, a new need is created somehow. So can you fill in that new need? So if you are able to replace that value proposition in line with a new need, then you have actually secured your position in the new value train that will define the industry. And that's how you actually keep going forward. And that's why the third point is so important. This is where innovation comes in. But many companies, how do they innovate? They innovate blind. They just, oh, this is the latest thing, this is cool, and they go and do it. But you want to innovate in a way that will keep you relevant in the value train. And that's what we call an intermediation strategy, where you insert a new value proposition into the value train while other people become irrelevant. So, what are some of the areas that you should be looking at in order to survive disruption? So, these are the 4 areas you can look at. 1, are customers' needs changing? Right? Are digital trends coming? What new technologies are there in the market? And are there unmet customers' needs? Because if a value chain is disrupted on a new value proposition, there might be some unmet customers' needs that have never been fulfilled. And that would still be an area where you can work on. So look at these 4 things, right? Look at what these 4 things are going to do to your current industry, to your current customers. Talk to them, find out how their behaviors are being changed because of these 4 things. And you might have a clue where to disrupt or where to protect yourself from disruption. Now, if you need help, this is actually an exercise that I use with my clients. So if you want to have this exercise to go through that with your team, to stimulate your thinking on how to plan for this disruption, you can get this exercise from us. So please get in touch with us. Let us know that you have watched this video and you want to work with your team on how to survive a disruption, so that we can send this exercise to you. This is actually a real exercise, a real tool that I work with companies undergoing that exercise to guard against disruption, or to plan to have an intermediation strategy. So if you really need this works, I'll be really glad to send it to you. Okay, so are you ready for digital transformation, and are you ready to scale your business? I mentioned that while disruption is really not about digital, but really digital will play a big part in future disruption. That's a trend, right? So you may want to reconsider this whole question of what does it mean to go through digital transformation. And most importantly, at the heart of it is this question: are you ready to scale your business? And this is where we have got some diagnostic tools that actually help you to understand whether your business is ready to scale. So get in touch with us if you want some of these diagnostics. Online, easy to do. Get your team to answer these questions, and you get a report to see where are the areas you need to work on if you want to scale your business in this 21st century. So once again, my name is Jeremy. I work with companies to implement scaling up, and one of the areas that now I'm working closely with companies is really in digital transformation. But digital transformation is really one of the very important means for companies to scale. So if you want to get in touch with me, contact us at grow@growthcatalyst.com.sg. Let us know you watched this video and you want to get this tool, and we will send it to you. And if you want to work on some of these diagnostic tests that will tell you whether are you ready to scale, get in touch with us and we will send it to you as well. Thank you for listening to this video. I'm really excited about this, and I really want to see your company surviving disruption and even thriving in the face of disruption. So get in touch with me if you need our help, and thank you very much. And there are other videos in this series on how to scale your business. I encourage you to watch those as well, because scaling up is not just about one area. It's actually a whole complete area that covers people, strategy, execution, and cash. And I've got videos that will help you in those areas as well. Thank you very much. See you again.